Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to start from a brand new parak, Hamoiches Abayis, Daf Samach Aleph, Amud Aleph, and Yetzer Hashem, we're going to try to get all the way till Samach Zayin, Amud Beis. So we're going to jump right into the Mishnah of Hamoiches Abayis. A person sells a bias, the Rashbam says stam. He did explicitly write in the contract many other stuff. We're going to see throughout the next few dapim that if it was explicitly said in the contract, we wouldn't have any questions. Hamoiches Abayis, a person sells a bias stam, loy machar yitzia. We're going to see it's an attachment, it's an annex. We'll see exactly either it's going to be a sunroom or more of a small attachment to the house. Even though it's going into the house, it's still not going to be sold because it's going to be a davar chashuv b'fnei atzmoi. Nor the storage room. The Rashbam says they put their stuff there, they use it as a safe room. All those stuff are not going to be sold. Neither a rooftop, when there's a makkah that has 10 tefachim, it makes it a davar chashuv b'fnei atzmoi, and it's not bottled to the house. However, if there's a tzuras of Pesach that you're able easily to get into the rooftop from the building, so even though because now it is a davar chashuv. Zok the Gemara right away, ma yitzio. What is this this taich when we're saying that a person doesn't sell a yitzio? So hacha targimu after in Bava, they explained it as an after, which is a small little type of garage next to the house or the back of the house. That's considered a yitzio. Yosef Aimer, rather it's a bitka chalila. Bitka chalila is more of a sunroom that has less comparison to a house. A house is fully, the yitzio is no real difference to whatever the tashrish used in the house. Mashenkin, a bitka chalila is more of a sunroom. Like today we have gazebos, all those stuff that you use more lenoi asi v'lahakasham zakter ishbam. So the man damar after loy misdavna, according to the first sheet in Bava, which we're saying that a person doesn't even sell this yitzia, this attachment to the house. Kol shkein bit chalila loy misdavna. Why the sunroom? Kol shkein is not going to be sold because it's less compared to the bias. However, the man damar bit chalila is not sold. Aval ifta, I could tell you it's sold misdavna because it's much more compared to a house and therefore it's batal. Tani Rav Yosef, shalosh shemois yeshloi. This concept where we have like in a cell, an attachment, something, a chamber that's connected to something, we have three different shemas we find this. Yetzia, which is our Mishnah, Tzela, and Ta. All these mean cells, chambers, etc. Yetzia, how do we know this means this type of thing? The chsiv, regarding the binyan Beis Medrash, it says, Yetzia hatachtoina chamesh ba'ama rachba. We're talking about that they had three different levels surrounding. The heichel is more like a ches. And each chamber had, the bottom chamber was what? It was 5 amas. We're going to see then it goes 6 amas and 7 amas. It was more like an attachment. They didn't want to put it in the walls, so it shouldn't be a bizayin to the mikdash. So every level went a little higher. Like that it was going out, so you can add another level. It ended up being 5, 6, 7. We clearly see that Yetzia, which is in a chamber, a cell, was 5 amas wide. So we see that taich word of Yitzia. Tzela, tichsev, v'hatzla'is, tzela, al-tzela. Shalosh v'shloishim pamim. These cells were what? They were 33. Why? Because it was 5 times 5, 3 plus 5, which was 13. 3 floors equal 33. We clearly see also the taich word of tzela means a cell, a chamber, etc. Ta, tichsev, v'hata, kana echad eirich, v'kana echad reichiv. This cell was what? It was a rod. How much is this rod? Was echad eirich v'kana echad roichif, and it was again a rod. How big is a rod? Hainu sheish amas. That's how big it was. So it's 6 amas wide, 6 amas long, 6 amas wide. Ubein atoyim chamesh amas. You clearly again see atah, the concept of a cell, a chamber. V'iba sema mahacha. We find this regarding the Mishnah in Masechtas Midas, where it talks about the length of the heichel. It says kaisel ha heichel sheish. The rear of this kaisel was what? Was 6 amas thick of the heichel. The hata, which is what we're trying to bring, the cell was 6 amas deep. Sheish, kaisel hata v'chamish. And the rear, again, the rear of this ta was 5. So clearly, again, you see ta is 5. The taich of ta means a cell, a chamber. Amar Zutra. Zutra says, v'hu dahave arba amas. In order to be davar chashuv, when we're saying like machar seyitzio, it's dafka when it's 4 by 4. If it's not 4 by 4, it's not a davar chashuv. Amar le Ravina l'mar Zutra. according to you, lididach da amris ad da ava arba amis, unless it's 4 amis, it's not going to be considered a davar chashuv. Elama'ata. Gabi bar, we're going to learn in Samach Dalet, the Tnan says in the Mishnah, a person when he sells a house, lo yesabar, v'lo yesados. He doesn't sell the bar or the dos. We're going to see that in Samach Dalet, exactly the chilukim between a bar and a dos, the chafiru b'binyan, why we need to mention both. But it clearly says, afapi, shekasav loy umka v'ruma, it's not sold, this bar and the dos. So, Zaktamar, Frektamar, Chinami, Yava Arba Amis Ani, Loy, is it reasonable to say the only time this bar is not going to be sold when it's Dalet Amis? There's Bama's Masber that every bar is less than Dalet Amis. It's very not typical to find a bar that's Dalet Amis. So it's hard to believe that it needs to be Dalet Amis. And that the Gemara answers, no, Hachi Ashto, how could you compare? Hasam ha tashmisha l'chod v'ha tashmisha l'chod. Regarding the Mishnah Samach Dalet, where we're talking about a bar v'dos. So you have a house, so even though the bar is not Dalet Amis, we could understand that since it's a davar chashuv b'fnei atzma, it does not need Dalet Amis. Mashenka over here, hacha idi v'idi chada tashmishti. In our Mishnah, we're talking about the Yitzia, for example, which is very similar tashmish to a house. Therefore, iava Dalet Amis chashuv, v'iloi loy chashuv, and the Rashbam says upatel l'gabe bayis when it's not Dalet Amis. The Mishnah clearly stated that leimacher siyitzia, whether it means a sunroom or a small little attachment to the house, and then the Mishnah continues and says, hu adin, a storage room that you use in the back for safes and etc. Now that we're learning that the Mishnah already told us that yitzia is not sold, where the tashmish is very equal to a house. Cheder miboy, it's a kol shekain cheder, which is as a different tashmish. You use it. You use it to say you use it as a safe room. It should be a kol shekain that it's not sold. You don't need the Mishnah to tell me that it's not sold. On that one, Samach Aleph on Beis, the Gemara answers light tzricha. You're right. In a typical case, you do not need to tell me that a cheder is sold. I would know it on its own. So where is this scenario where we want to say that a cheder is not sold? Zok the Gemara da'af agav de matzele mitzroy avroi. In talking about a scenario, even though, for example, you have a house with a cheder, and you wrote, I'm selling you this house all the way up to the boundaries of Reuven, on top, Shimon on the right, Levi on the left, Yehuda on the bottom. Now, if you look at that boundaries, you see that the cheder is somewhere in there. So you would say, oh, I clearly see that you put this cheder in the boundaries. So without the Mishnah, I'll tell you, it's sold kamash on the Mishnah. Even in such a case, we're going to see like Rav Nachman, even in such a case where you put the cheder in the boundaries of the shtar, it's still not going to be sold. Why? Because Rav Nachman, the Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Hamoicher bayis lechaveiroi, bebira gdoila. Person sells a house in this apartment building. Afa pisha mitzar. Loi, meitzorim achitzainim. There's a concept, a new taich called meitzorim hirchav loi. Rashbam explains that he didn't know how to taich it up. Where can I tell my client the boundary? So what he did was he gave exterior landmarks like that he could clearly understand. But that the Mishnah's mechadish us that there's a concept called meitzorim hirchav loi, and certain stuff that have not the exact chelik of the house are not going to be sold. Now, for Ekdemar, in the case of Nachman, where we're telling us that when a person sells an apartment, a house, he's in the apartment building, even though you have a beautiful big apartment building, we're going to see that has a lobby, that has recreational rooms, it's more than just living spaces. And that we're saying right now that it's not sold. So for Ekdemar, hey chidami, what's the case? People call a house of a beer, an apartment building. Pshita, bayis zavenle, beer loy zavenle. It's pasha that what? That he's selling in the house and not apartment building. Ella, you're going to have to tell me the beer or what? The beer, nami law, correlate bias, apartment building, they also call it house, then kule zabenle. So what is this case that we're talking about when you're selling a house in an apartment building? And I think my answer is leit tzricha. The ruba, correlate, the bira, the bias, the beer. Most people call it the way it's supposed to be. However, v'ika nami de la bira, correlate bias. There are some people that call it bira bias. So what would you think? Mao de tema kule zavenle, l'chari has to sell them the whole entire apartment building. Kamash Malon, Medahavale Lemichtav. You should have write an extra clause in the contract, which is Veloy Shayaris Vizini Ilan Klom. I'm not leaving anything for myself. Veloy Kasav Shma Mino Shiuri Shire. So over here we're telling us a concept. Whenever there's something, an ika, which is a few people, is enough to create a suffix, and that suffix is going to make it that Yad Bal Hashtar Ala Tachtoina. and he must protect himself. So how should he protect himself? He should force the meicher to add a clause in the contract to write that I'm not leaving anything for myself. If he doesn't put that clause in, he's going to be yad bal ashtar ala tachtoina. In such a scenario, he's going to lose, and he's only going to get the bias and not a bira. Now we're going to say exact same shakla v'tario, just like we mentioned by a bias and a bira. We're going to say this by a sad and a bika valley, the exact same shakla v'tario. We're going to see why we need both. A person sells a field in a big valley. Even though he continued and put his own other sadas, and he extended the boundaries, made tsarim, this exact same concept. Again, the Gemara goes this back and forth. What is this case? The Karle saw this sada bika, then pshita saw the zavanle bika loy zavanle. Then Manashach, it's Pashi sold the sada. Am I going to tell me the bika nami Karle sada? Then kulei zavanle. And then the Gemara gives the exact same text we said earlier. Light tzricha. The ika de la sada Karle sada la bika. The ika nami, now there's a mir that's going to create a suffix. The la bika Karle sada. So mao the temi you tell me. Kulei zavanle, everything is sold. Kamash malon again. This same concept of yad bal ashtar tachtoinam and the havle the michtavle veloy shayares bizvine ilan kadaimet klom like kaslei shma mino shir shire. So again, we have the exact same back and forth by the bika and a sada and a bias and a bira. So for Gemara, very simple question: why do we need to be repetitive? Why do we need to say this by a bira and by a sada? Gemara says utrich, I need both. Di ashmina bias, I'll tell you. You know why? Mishum daha tashmish alachod va tashmish alachod. By a bias, they each have their own tashmish. Avobikog, dekula, chada, tashmishu, mashenke by val, they all do the exact same tashmish. And mashenke by bias and a bira. The reason why it's hot tashmish alachod, hot tashmish alachod, this is what I was saying earlier about a recreational room, a lobby. Whenever you walk into big apartment buildings, there's much more than just the living spaces. So therefore, you can't be mechalik it. You could be mechalik a bias and a bira. Mashenkein saw that they all do the same accomplishment, rather just plant fields. That's all they do. So Mashenkein, therefore, if we'll just say bias and a bira, I'll tell you because it's separate. Tashmishim, one has a lobby, one doesn't. A bika the kula chada tashmishi. They all do the same thing as a sada. Ema kuli zavanle. So therefore, I needed to tell me bika. So for Eknemar, to say bika, don't say bias. Vi ashmin and bika mishum delay havele lementzale. He had no choice. He had no way to explain it without saying the landmarks of Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Avo bias the havele lementzale veloy matzale kuli zavanle. There's Bama's master. What's by a house? By bias. Even today, we could say it's 9-foot ceilings. There's 4 bedrooms. There's 2 bathrooms. The lobby and the entranceway is different. Every house. Again, we have to assume we're talking about where it wasn't the exact same houses, right? Every house has a different measurement, Zuckersbaum. Therefore, he could have easily explained that. Therefore, if it would only say Bika, I would not know. Bias, Kamash Malon, we mentioned both to tell us who had then bias. It's not going to have this halach. Meila Tzricha. Zok Gemara, Kaman Oslo, who is this going? Had Amar Av Mari. Marei de Bashmul, we all know Bashmul because the mother was captured. That's what we name it. And then Bashmul. Mishmei da Abaya. Hi man. The mizmile midi lechavre, a person who sells something to his friend, sarach lemichtavle loisha yaris bizvini ilan kadamaklu. Who is this? Come on, Rav Nachman, like we just saw right now. Rav Nachman says this halacha, this concept of yad bal hashtar la tachtoina. The second there's doubt, who has to prove it? The lekeach, not the meicher. Come on, Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu. Zok the Gemara, ahu damale lechavre. A person tells his friend, Ara de Bechia mizavan alach. I'm selling you the land of the Bechia. Now what happened was, Havale Tarti Arasa Davi Miskar in the Bechia. There was 2 properties that had the name of the Bechia. So which one is he selling? He's clearly selling one. There's no question he's selling both. The question is which one? Amar Vashi, Chada Amarle, Tarti Amarle. He's only selling one and not 2. And not only that, the Meiche could choose the shvacher one to give it to the lekeach. He has the upper hand. V'amalei arasa. What happens? He just says a plain lashon, plural lashon. He doesn't explain what is miyat arasa. Zok the Gemara is time. The minimum of plural is 2, so you're going to have to give him 2, but no more. However, v'amalei kol arasa. If he says no everything, then kol arasa the isla is going to get everything. Lebar except mebustani zok the Shbam is ginoi supradesi, which are kramim. V'yamal ziyara, ziyara is a lashon, Dr. Shban, that all karkas that you cultivate, all karkas that you make something out of it, it's called ziyara. So you say the lashon ziyara, then afilu beibustin and pardisis can be sold, except lebar mibati v'abdi, except houses and avodim, which avodim are hukash l'karka in a certain way. That's not going to be sold. One samach beis amad aleph v'amar le nichsi. If he says nichase, then afilu biti v'avdi. However, the metaltalim is not until he says kol nichsi. We're going to go through the next amud. We're going to go through a bunch of different scenarios how a person sold a sadeh with all the neighbors' boundaries. Matzah loy one samach beis amad aleph, the top of the amud. Matzah loy meitzer echad aruch u meitzer echad katzer. The Rashbam, they bring illustration to explain exactly what we're talking about is as follows. You have Reuven on one side of the field, and you have Shimon and Levi on the other side. So what happened was he wrote Reuven, I'm going to give him the sadeh on Reuven on one side. However, he just mentioned Shimon on the other side. He did not mention a different person. Now Shimon, and there's Levi. What happens with the boundary next to Levi? Do we say he didn't mention Levi, therefore he's only going to get, if you look at the illustration, the first illustration on the daf that all Gemars bring down, he's only going to get a straight line where it says Kutzer. Only Reuven's half and Shimon's half, but Levi's half he's not going to get for sure because it doesn't say it in the star. And the chiddush is maybe that even the chelek sheni of Reuven, which is on the left in the illustration, is not going to be sold since he didn't mention Levi. On that, the Gemara says, Amar Rav, loikon ela keneged ketzer. That's taka the way it looks in the illustration. You get a straight line down, and you're not going to get the left side of the sadeh. Amar le'Rav Kana Rav Asi l'Rav v'yikne keneged roish tor. Whatever roish tor means, some say it means either a type of jewelry piece that's a shape, a triangle shape, the way you're going to see in the illustration of the second one, or it means a head of an ox. But the question is, why are you not koine on the left side of Reuven? Very nice, we're not koine Levi on the top, but we should make it on an angle to a certain degree that I should get the chelek of Reuven. So Shasik Rav was quiet, it sounded like he was Maida. And now Zok the Gemara, Maida Rav, which the Rashbam says, Mekamei de Ishtik. Rav is talking about, even in such a case, whether he's Maida to Rav Kahana or not, doesn't make a difference, but he's Maida Rav in a scenario as follows. When you have Reuven and Shimon on one side, Umeitzer Levi v'Yehuda mechad gisa. The chiddush over here is talking about where there's four people you could have easily mentioned. The Reuven keneged Levi. Very simple. If you really wanted to be like the first case where it's a straight line down that just Reuven against Shimon, you should have easily wrote Reuven keneged Levi, v'Shimon keneged Yehuda. But like Kasala, you didn't write in such a case. Rather, you wrote Reuven and Shimon, and you didn't mention Bechlal, the other name, because in such a case it would have been easily for you to explain if you really wanted it, like the first illustration. You could have easily said, I'm only selling Reuven Keneged Shimon, but Levi is not involved, and Yehuda is not involved. Mashenki, in the earlier case, there was no next door to Reuven, there was nobody there. So Memela, you wrote Reuven. But now that you have a neighbor on the bottom side of the sadeh, you could have easily mentioned, I'm not selling Shimon's chelik, near Shimon's boundary.
Is this built on the din of Musar and Mitzvah? And you say that the fact that he said 100, 150, that's Musar and Mitzvah, therefore, it doesn't get the other, why would he have to say the other side for local?
Why would he?
Is that built on the fact that we learned, like enough of the Musar and Mitzvah?
It doesn't have to stem dafka with Rav Nachman Mitzar Michla. Mitzar Michla is in other cases where it's a chiddush of Yad Val Ashtar Tachtaina in a scenario we have no other choice but to mention exterior boundaries. Over here you have everything quite clear. Where are the boundaries? We're working with that theme in the Gemara of we don't know what to do with the boundaries. But Lav Dafka have to work with the chiddush of Meitzarim Hirchivloi. Zok the Gemara weiter. Meitzar, another scenario. Meitzar Reuven Mizrach Umayrav Umeitzar Shimon Tzafoin Vidarim. So again, this is going to be the fourth illustration on all Gemaras. You have Meitzar Reuven Mizrach Umayrav, very clearly on top of the bottom of Southers Reuven. Umeitza Shimon, Tzav and Darim, Shimon's on the right and Shimon's on the left. So the halach is, Tzarech lemichtavle, you have to write in the star, Meitza Reuven Ruchin Train. I'm selling you both sides of Reuven. Umeitza Shimon Ruchin Train, and Shimon on the right and on the left. However, if you don't write such a case, then the halach is going to be, it's only going to be kaina in a slant option. And not only that, he's only going to end up with one chelik of the sadeh, and not only that, he can decide exactly which chelik I want to give it. Once you slice the sadeh, you really have a bunch of options how you could give him the sadeh, because Reuven and Shimon are in all cases. So he gets to decide it. So if you don't write that, Zok der Shbam Avadi is going to be Kaineh Ba'alachsan. So if you want it to be solved, to make sure you get such a Sadeh fully, you have to write Ruchein Train. Another case. Iboilu, we're going to question as follows. Siyem loy es akronois mau. What is the halacha in a scenario where you have Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda? However, all you mentioned was the corners. So the shaila is, are you mentioning just the corners because to make it easier? Mi amrina zok der Shbam ein derech limkar kronis asada. Since it's not normal just to sell the corners rather than the entire field, therefore he mentions the corners to make it easier. Dilma, the only thing you're going to be kaineh loymachar ella. Tell him if you look at the illustration, it ends up being an X. Mahu. Another question. Kimin gam. Kimin gam mahu is when you add, for example, you have A, B. You have a bunch of different sadas, and you mentioned the two corners. You added another corner. So there, it's more of an imtim tzaloim zok der Shbam. Imtim tzaloim. You're going to tell me in a scenario where you don't mention all the corners. You're not kainet. Maybe in a scenario now where you're meisif another corner, you will be kainet. Kamin gam mahu. So zok the Gemara lamaisa another shayla beseragin mahu. Another intim saloimar. Are you kainet in a scenario where if you look at the illustration one samach beis base illustration over there where you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, many names. And when you only wrote Reuven, Levi, Yisachar, and Yosef. If you look at the illustration and the others, those cases. So what is the halacha in such a scenario? The Gemara Lamaisa blives Teku, and therefore it's a Teku. It's going to be a Maitzim Mechaver Levarayah the Lekeach, and it's going to come out that Reuven's a Kaineh, but Shimon's not, etc., and each and every one. Zok the Gemara Vaita Samach Beis, top of the Amid. Meitzer loy meitzer rishoin umeitzer sheni umeitzer shlishi. However, umeitzer revi'i loy meitzer loy. You didn't mention the top, the fourth boundary. What is the halacha? So we're going to have three different shittas. Amar Rav, kana hakol chutz meitzer revi'i. Rav shita is you're going to be kaina everything except the fourth meitzer that he gets to keep for the meicher. V'shmuel amar afilu meitzer revi'i kaina. Shmuel wants to say he gets everything. And the reason why he didn't mention it, the high delight kasvei, delight sarach, he didn't need to mention because to him was the davar pasha. Now we're going to see Shitas Rav Asi, which is going to work a little with Rav Asi Omar, like kana ella telem echad al pnei kula. Rather, he's going to get only, like the Rashbam says, like a ches. He's going to only end up with the gimel meitzarim, and he's not going to get the rest. So Zok the Mar is masber Shitas Rav Asi. Sarva kirav. He holds like Rav the Omar shiur shire. However, when the Shire Meitzer, Shire Nami Bekule, Rav Asi is going extra extreme. He's saying a person is not going to leave just the Mitzvah for himself and not take the Sada. Rather, Avad, he's also going to keep the Sada, so he's working with Shitas Rav. However, he takes Rav and he pounds in it, and he goes right to say he's also going to get the entire Sada for himself, the Meich. However, Zok the Gemara, Amar Rava. Rava is working similar to like Rav, but he's going to have his own Tanayim in it. Amar Rava, Hilchasa, Kana hakol chutz memeitzer revi, which is Shitas Rav. However, Zok Rava veloy amaron elo deloy muvla. So again, most Gemaras, the Izvada brings the illustration of muvla, and loy muvla is when that fourth sada is it part of the other gimel sadas and not. Zok Rava veloy amaron elo deloy muvla. The only time you're not going to be kainet and when it's separate. Avo muvla if it's together in the other sadas. Then the halach is kana. That's Tanai number one. Another halach is even when it's not muvla, it's also not going to be sold. Only when there's either richba dedikla or v'havet tishakabin, which makes this chelik a revi a davar chashav b'fnei atzmai. Then we say it's not sold and we stick it by the meicher. Masha'in kain, if it's a very small chelik, even it's not muvla, according to this first mahalach, we're going to see Ikadami in a moment, but according to the first mahalach, you need to have two tanoim. It needs to be loy muvla. The intim loy muvla has to be chashuv b'fnei atzmai. Avaleka la richba dedikla v'loy havet tishbakabin, then the halach is kana. Zoktimar Mechla, in a scenario the Chi Muvla, when it is Muvla, Afagav Dikale Rechba de Dikla, Vahavi Tisha Kabin, even though it's a Dover Chashuv Bifnei Atzmai, since it's Muvla, it's Kana. So this is the first mouth. Now we're going to see an Ika Da'amri. Ika Da'amri says, Amar Rava Hilchas Akana Kova Filu Meitzervi. Mamish, like so far, it's Mamish like we were saying earlier, like Rav. However, Veloy Amaron Elo de Muvla. Aveloy Muvla like Kani. The halach is, you know when it's sold to this, like Keach, only when it's Muvla. However, if it's not Muvla, it's not sold. V'chi Muvla Nami Loy Amaron. Even when it's a Muvla, it's also not going to be sold. Ela deleka le richba de dikla. Only when there is no davar chashuv v'nei atzmai v'lo have tisha kabin. However, ika le richba de dikla v'hav tisha kabin loy kana, even in a scenario where it is Muvla. That's the chiddush of the second mahalach, that you need either or, only one. Either loy Muvla automatically, it's nikin, and even if it's Muvla, if it's tisha kabin, it's also not going to be sold. Mechal dechi Muvla avgav deleka le richba de dikla. So Zok Mar is foul. Shamina metavayu, listen to the Ravo. We clearly see, Bain the first lashon, Bain the Ikad Amri, the Besada, the Loishayer Loimidi. In a case of a Sada, you don't keep anything for yourself. Vishamina Nami, the Hecha, in this scenario, the Hecha de Muvla, and it's a case where it's Muvla veleka le richba de dikla lo have tishakabin lekulam Bain the Ikad Amri, Bain the first lashon, the halach is kana, the lekech gets it. Other case around loy muvla v'ikala richba de dikla v'havites kam, which means you have both things needed. It's not muvla and it's a davar chashuv v'nei atzmai, again like kana. So then there's no shaila. Where is the shaila? The nafkemina between the ikad amri is as follows: mivla v'ikala v'loy mivla v'lekala. In a scenario, you only have one of the options. Either it is muvla, but it's a davar chashuv. So according to the second mahalach, it's not going to be sold. According to the first malach, it is going to be sold. Or loy muvla veleka, again, loy muvla, according to the second mahalach, it's automatically not going to be sold. However, according to the first malach, since there's no davar chashuv v'nei atzmai, it will be sold. It's malai gisa, the way we're saying it's totally on the lushonis. So what is the halacha? Shuda de daini. We saw this already on Lamed Hey Amad Aleph, machlekes Rashbam and Taisis. What is shuda de daini? According to Rashbam, it's oyavav v'krayvav. We try to evaluate the Lashon Taisis we saw over there in the rear Bein Tam, that it's up to Bezdin to decide who to give it to. Zok Digmar Viter. Omar Rava. We're talking about a case where a person's a shutif in the karka. Shitas Rav is going to be is the words where he says, de isli, on what I own, according to Shitas Rav, we're going to see Abaya otherwise, but Shitas Rabba, it's going to be the words de isli is going on what I just said a moment, the word before. So Zoktimar Amarava, Palga, when a person's a shotif, and he says, half that I own Ba'ara, Palga. The reason is, because the words the Isli is going on Palga, so he's giving over his Chelik HaShutfis. However, Zokt Rabbah, when he says, Palga Ba'ara, half of the land which I own, the Isli, then he's only going to get Revia. Why? Because the Isli and what I own is going on the Ara. And how much does he own in the Ara? He only owns 50%, and then he's willing to give 50% of that. Memelia down to reveal. Abaya argues, Abaya, maybe I don't know if it's a machlokes in diktuk, but Abaya doesn't hold that the words de isli is going specifically on a word, whether he says it before the sentence, rather it's going on the entire sentence that he's saying. So therefore, it shouldn't make a difference. He should get the exact same measurement. So ishtik. Rabbi was quiet. So Abai said, I'm not sorry, mid the ishtik. Now the Rabbi was quiet. Kibule, kibla. He accepted what I said. And therefore, he's always going to get the same share. It doesn't make a difference. However, why not? I would see the Hanu Stari did not be mar. The Kazabu Hachi. And he did what he originally said, which is Shitas Rabbi, that it depends how he wrote it. Palgo de isli ba'ara. Then he gets Palgo. Pagabar Isli, again, he's going to get Reviyah. He didn't change Rabba what he originally held, that the words de Isli is going on the word before. V'amarav, another halacha, Meitzer Ara Dimino Palga. We're talking about a scenario where a person's only selling some of his field. Reuven, he had a son, then he's selling some of it to Shimon. Now, he said, I'm giving you a chelik. So how much is that chelik? Meitzer Ara Dimine Palga. If he said, Meitzar Dimine Palga, he's going to get Palga. If he says, I'm giving you a chelik of this Meitzar, then he's going to get half. However, if he says, Meitzar Dimine Psika, I'm going to give you what's cut off, not a lashon of dividing, then he's going to get Tes Kabin. So again, it's totally how he worded it. Did he say he's going to just cut off a piece for him? which then we don't know what that means. It's cut off. We're going to see in a second. Abaye is going to say it should mean the same shear, or it means the lashon that he's going to give him divided. What's the difference between using the lashon of dividing something or using the lashon of cutting off? They both mean l'chayra the same shear. So ishtik, he was quiet. Savi minei idi v'idi palga. Veloi, again, it's not really true. Why? Damar v'yemer b'shalamyo when samach gimel amid aleph ledidi mifarsheli minei da abaya bein meitza da ara de minei palga u bein meitza ara de minei psika. Ein chanami. He's going to get the exact same share whether he uses a lashon cut off or he uses a lashon divided. So what's the chiluk? I amelei ilim mitzaharna. Then he's going to get palga. Lo amelei ilim mitzaharna. He doesn't clearly say. Then he's going to get only Tisha Kabin, and the Rishbam is mas, but what's the chilek? If he says Elam and Saharna or not, why should that change it from a minimum share of Tes Kabin, which is the minimum, to have Zakter Rishbam is since he's using a Yiter Lashon, Elamai, he's coming to tell me something that shouldn't be, which is usually would be the minimum. Now he's using a Yiter Lashon in the star to tell you I also want to get, I'm also going to be, the Lashon is Liyapois Koiches Zakter Rishbam. I'm doing it to help the Lakeach, and therefore he's going to get not just Tisha Kabin, rather he's going to get half of the Sada. Zok the Marad Samach Gimel Amad Alf, the 2 dots. Pshita, we're talking about a shchimera, or a person is giving away his nechasim, is followed. Pshita, Amar Yachloik, Ploini Binechase. The Lashon Yachloik. What does Yachloik mean? Zok the Marad, it means Palgo. Lashon Yachloik means to get half. What happens when he says Tnu Chelik? What is Chelik? Yachloik, we're willing to swallow, means half. What is the word Chelik? Le Ploini Binechase Mai. Amar Ravina Bakisi. Toshma, the Tanya, we're going to find us a raya. It says in a brayso. Tnu chelik, mamish this case of chelik. Tnu chelik leploini bebar. When a person says, I want to give a chelik of my nechasim in a bar. Again, we're talking about a bar, either bar shel yain, there's Bam doesn't like, but rather bar shel mayim. We're talking about a bar shel mayim, and he says, I'm giving you a bar. I'm giving you a chelik. So now, zok tomorrow, sumchas aimer, ein pachas mirvia. Why? We all know Shita Sumchas is Kol Maman Amota B'Salfik Chalkin. So Zok Sumchas, the minimum he's going to get is a little more than a Riyah. Even though in Pachas and Riyah, it should say a little more than a Riyah. Why? Because the whole Machlaikis is on half the bar. What happens when you have a Salfik? It's a Maman Amota B'Salfik. So he's going to end up with the Riyah plus a minimum shear. Lechavis, all these shiurim, and we're going to see in a moment whether it's buckets, pitchers, barrels, it doesn't make a difference what it really is. The concept is the same. Is that we evaluate what is bechlal the argument, how much is the share that we're arguing, and split it into half. So chavis ain't pachas mishminis, and again the reason why it's an eighth because we're really splitting it. We really evaluate how much the share of a typical person would really get with a chavis. Since he's only going to get bechlal, the whole argument is he only deserves a quarter. That's the share really. So mainly we do a quarter split into 2, which is 8. L'kdeira again weiter. In pachas miyabeis against the 12th, all we're really doing is splitting the 6th, letafiach, which is a klikotin to drink water from. In pachas again mishisha asa, because the whole machlekes would be really is an 8th. Nothing more to 8th is a davai haragel. So since we're only arguing about an 8th, again sum chashita is we split it into 2. Therefore you're going to end up with a 16th. So again, so we're trying to bring a raya Yehuda over here by a chelik. It's really machlekes sumchas and Rabbanan. So when a person says I'm giving a chelik leploni, what's the shayla? We're really arguing over a half. So according to Sumchas, he's going to get a minimum share plus a quarter of the nechasim. According to Rabbanan, Shitas Rabbanan is going to be hamoitzi mechaveroi olav haraya. Very good shmak. Tana Rabbanan. Ben Levi. We're talking about Levi. The Rishbam right away says lav dafka ben Levi or chadamosanakat. We could be talking about anyone, but we want to say dafka ben Levi. Why? What are we talking? We're talking about the Ma'aser Rishon that everyone has to give to the Levi. Now, Ben Levi says to Yisrael as follows, I'm willing to sell you my sada, but I want to get the 10% back automatically. You have nothing to lose, because you either have to give Ma'aser, we have this by today, stock organizations try to operate like that with grocery stores, that type of concept. That you either way have to give Ma'aser, so either way let's make a cheshbon, and we'll flip it back right to me. So Ben Levi shemachar sada li Yisrael. That's what he wants. He wants to get that Ma'aser Rishon, which he automatically would either get. The only difference is he's forcing in a position that he has to keep it. The halach is Ma'aser Rishon Shaloi. He taka gets to keep the Ma'aser. The Rishonim do explain how do we really understand that the Yisrael, how is he solving Hilchas Ma'aser? The chayr of the 10% we're going to see is not really ever given to me. then I never really gave Meiser my 90%. So the Rishonim explain whether it's going to be that he's going to give it to him b'tar salva, ayin shom ba'arichas. But at a basic level, he gets the Meiser Rishon. And he's Yaitse, and the Ben Yisrael is Yaitse. V'im amar li, however, if he uses, he has to add an extra lashon. V'im amar li lebanai, then may sit in lebanav. The Gemara says, in order to give it to his sons, he has to write li lebanai. The reason is because if we were to write that, we keep it with a chiddush on its own, and therefore, without writing li lebanai, ein by el chidusha, which would be only that person, but not his kids. So Mela, once he's miyaser loshainai, he adds a yita lashon of Osa's kids, then even if he dies, he gets to his kids. V'im amar loi, Kolzman, Shasad Zubiadcha, only as long as the sod is in your house. So he found the loophole, a Yiddish cup. What's he do? Machra, he immediately sells it to somebody else. Therefore, it's ready, not considered in his hands. V'chazav alacha, and he buys back all his chusim. Like that, he got rid of that loophole, he got rid of that law that he had to give it right back to him that he agreed on. Ein loy alav klom, he has no taina in him. Lamaisa, it was pakalei the makam, Lamaisa, he sold it to somebody else. Now, frektamar b'chlal. How could you tell us that this Meiser Rishon sticks to the Levi? Frekta Marmai, we all know, Ein Adam, Makne, Dover, Shaloi, Balaylam. So l'chayra, this is a Meiser that's not yet created. You have a Chiyam Meiser when you give it to the Yisrael. Till then, l'chayra, it never was in the Velt. And that the Gemara answers. Kivan the Amalei al Menas. Since he's making a Tanai of a Menas, Shemaiser Rishon Shali, Sheyure, Shayere, Lemaka Meiser. Here we're saying a Chiddush, that there's a concept, once he makes a Tanai, really rather he's keeping this mice over here, and it's a Dover Shabbat La'ilam, and again, like we had to explain earlier, that we had to be talking about how we're going to solve that the Yisrael is going to be Yaitze, Chiyev, Meiser. But again, it clearly works that since you're saying Amanas, it's considered like it's still here. Zok the Gemara, Amere Shlakish, Zoyse Meres, from here we see, HaMoicher Bais L'Chaveiroi. From this Bryce, it's very clear because we're going to question, what is Zoyse Meres? So Amere Shlakish, Zoyse Meres, that HaMoicher Bais L'Chaveiroi ve'Amer Loi Amanas shall the Yaita al Yaina Shali. The halach is the Yaita al Yaina Shali, he gets to keep the Yaita. Now, we clearly saw in our Mishnah already, that even without saying Al Minas, it still gets to keep the Yaita al Yaina L'Chaira, doesn't change anything. So Frek the Gemara, well, on Samach Gimel on base, Lamai Helchasa. What is this nafkamina that we're saying that you need to say Dil Yaita al Yaina Shaloi? Ha Belav we already learned in the Mishnah. It's going to work. HaMayches Abayis, we clearly said Loi Machar Dil Yaita al Yaina. So we're going to have two shittas, and they're not going to agree with each other, and the Rishbam is going to explain why. Razvid Omar, you know why you're adding an extra Tanai? Shem Ratza Lahaitzi Bazizin Maitzi. The person selling his bias in a chatzar. However, if he were to make this Tanai, when he sells his chatzar, he loses all the airspace to that chatzar. And therefore, even though the Yaita al Yaina is his, he's not going to be able to stick out a beam on top of the chatzar. So Mela makes a Tanai like that, he gets the schusim of keeping that beam. And we're going to see that's why the Amanas helps it that he never really sold it. The schus, b'chlal to the kech, is not like he's buying it back. That shitas rezvit. Rav Papa Amashem Ratza Livnais Aliyah Agaba Baina. The chiddush Rav Papa is that what? That he wants to rebuild it. He has a schus by saying this now he's going to be able to rebuild it. And now the Rishbam is Masber. There is Vin and Rav Papa argue with each other. So what's the Be'er Machlaikis? The Rishbam is the beginning of Masker Rav Papa. He says that Kula Hai Lo Yahani Tanai L'Shayer Mokim Mashamacher. Rav Papa Shita is a person is not thinking of what he's selling completely. I'm giving you the chatzah. I'm not thinking that I want to take back something. However, I'm willing to say that I want, just like Bi'ilonais, by the karka, I want to be able to replace it if something happens. Shita Zazid is the opposite. Haitzah Zizin is something right now today. A person, Zok Zid, doesn't think about the future. That's the Lashon, the end of Rishbam, this same Dibra Maskell brings the Pshat Zvit, that a person, Haitzah Zizin Masik Daite, a person is willing to think about today, because he wants this beam, but in the future he doesn't think, so that is the Machlaikis, Rav Papa, and Rezvit. So now for more. Bishmuler Zvid, we can understand Hainuk Tani Zaysameres. We see this concept that what you're keeping something of Shiure Shire, now I get the airspace in the Chatzar. Eller Papa, my Zaysameres, Papa saying a whole different concept. You're able to rebuild. It's not that I'm keeping something of Shiure Shire just like Meiser Rishon of a Levi. The Meiser Nechanami, the Gemara replies, Kasha, Tztaka, Shver, Lefi, Shitas, Rav, Papa. Zok the Gemara Vaitis, Hamachimel, Mebeis, the two dots. Hi man de mazmele base of the chavre. A person sells his house to his friend. Afagab de kosevle Umka veruma, even though he writes, I'm selling the depth and the height. Tzarich lemichtav le kani lecha. I'm selling to you mitahaim rab, all the way from the depths of the ground, the adroim rikia, all the way till the rikia. That is shitas Rav Dimi. Frak the Gemara, my taima. The umka veruma, what shot? The umka veruma bestama loikani. Just saying umka veruma is not going to help us. Ahani umka veruma lemikni umka veruma. So you need a right in order to be kind of the airspace. Without that, we're learning you wouldn't be kind of the airspace. So what's the help that the haim ara? V'hani mitahim ara. V'ad reimer kila mikni also to be kind of like we're going to see the bar dos the mechilas. Ad kan shitas Rav Dimi. Let's try to bring a riot to this shita Rav Dimi. State in the Mishnah, veloyes abar, veloyes adus. We're going to see this in a moment, the next daf, that a person does not sell when he sells a house, this pit, the bar and the dus. Af api shekasav like umkavruma. That's mamish the lashon in the Mishnah. So zakdamar, v'yisaka daitech bistama, you are kaini. Umkavruma, which would not be like Shitas Rav Dimi. Then when you write umkavruma, lahani, umkavruma, lemikni, bar v'dar, mechilas. So l'chayra elamai, it's a writer of Dimi that even if a person writes, but does not write, is not going to the airspace unless he writes the kavaruma and the hani time to tell us barvitus. On that the Gemara is delay kasav. Correct Gemara. So zok Gemara delay kasav. You know what we're talking about in a scenario where you didn't write kavaruma. Correct Gemara. Look at the Mishnah. Clearly says on Samach Dalet afapi shekasav kavaruma. So it says afapi shekasav like tani. So how can you tell me delay kasav? On that the Gemara replies and says hachi kamar. Even though you didn't write veruma, it's kemisha kasav dami lemikni veruma, and lemikni barvadus mechilas. Then it depends. I kasav le veruma kani, v'ilai kasav like kani lemaisa. Therefore, it's not a raya. We're back to that. We don't have a raya to shitas Rav Dimi. Toshma. We're going to try to bring another raya to Rav Dimi. Which is our Mishnah on Samach Aleph. A person does not sell the rooftop when there's a makeh gavoya asara tvachim. One Samach Dalet Amud Aleph top of the Amud. V'yisalka daitich bistama kani umka veruma. If that's taka true, then gigavoya asara tvachim may have a l'chayra. What's the help if it's 10 tvachim? You either way not kaina l'chayra. This is shitas Rav Dimi. Then you're not going to the airspace. So what's the help? And that the answer is no. Kivan de gavoya asara tvachim. Once it's something which is 10 tvachim, it makes it chashiv, makes it a makah b'fnei atzmai, and it's not bottled to the house. Then avada, you're not kind of mashenkin. The avir, you have to say the avir agag until the l'rakia is ruma v'huadin l'umka. You are kind of mistama l'chayitz araya to Rav Dimi. Amalei Ravina Ravashi Toshma. Now we're going to bring a raya not like Rav Dimi. The Amar Yesh Lakish. Zoi Sameres, this is what we just saw on top of Samach Gimel. Zoi Sameres, Amayche Baisa Chaver V'Amalai. Amanas, Shil Di Yaitel Yaina Shali, Da Yaitel Yaina Shalai. When we asked Ramina Lamai Hilchasa, why do I need to say it? So we saw Reb Zvid Amashem Ratzalaitzi Bazizin Maitzi, which we saw Samach Gimel and Beis all the Shitas. Reb Papa Amashem Ratzalaitzi Noisel Yagaba Baina, that he's able to replace the roof. So for Mara against Reb Dimi, V'Isaka Daitich Bistama. Loikani lamali amanas. Why do I need to write? Why do I need to say amanas? I'm either way not kind of. That's why our answer is ahani amanas. Di nafil hada banila. The ainu laila mistama. I'll tell you the lekach is not kind of the room. So you know what it helps to add this extra lashon. This extra lashon is going to help us that if the roof falls down, I'm able to replace it. Sok the Mishnah Samach Dalet Amud Aleph. Lo yesabar v'lo yesados afapi shekasav loy umka. This is Mamashitas Rav Dimi. A person sells a house. He doesn't sell the bar and the dus. And we're going to see exactly what a bar and dus means. V'tzarech likach loy derech. We're going to go into a fascinating shitas Rabbi Kivan Rabbanon of a meicher ba'in yafe meicher, a meicher ba'in ra meicher. We saw this a little on Zayin and Beis. Regarding someone who sells ilanais, does he get, when he gives it to the lekech, is he also giving the schus of the karka, the replace those ilanais or not? So Zok the Gemara, v'tzarech likach like derech, the meicher needs to get the derech back to go to this bar v'dos dever akiva. V'chachamim aimrim einay tzarech likach like derech. A chacham want to say a person is not going to have to, since he has this bar, he's not going to have to buy the derech, and we're going to see exactly in the Gemara all the Shittas. Rabbi Kiva says as follows. Bizman she'amar lo chutz me'elu she'ein tzarech likach derech. Since he's doing a Yisa Lashon and he's writing chutz me'elu, he didn't have to do Elo Zok Rabbi Kiva. You know why he's doing it? To tell us that he does not need to get the derech. However, the Rashbam is Maisiv, the Rabbanan, you're going to have to say that he just did it l'Ravocha the Milsa, because why else did he put it in according to Rabbanan? Rashbam says you have to say that, but according to Rabbi Kiva, we can understand he did a Yisa Lashon to tell you get a derech. Machron la'acher. What is the case where it's the other way around? You only sold the bar v'dos, but the house you kept to yourself. Rabbi Kiva Aimer eina tzarich likach leiderech. The lekeach does not need to buy a derech. V'chachamim aimrim tzarich likach leiderech. And it's very crucial to understand that Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan sheet the stick, and they stay the same. Bein l'reisha, bein l'sefer. Whether you sell only the bar or you sell your house and not the bar, the same shittas are going to apply. The Gemara is going to expound on this. Look, the Gemara. Yosef Ravina v'kakashile hainu bar hainu dus. The hainu, Ravina's bothered. Avadi, he knows them bar v'dus to a certain degree is different. There's different wording. However, he's bothered. What is the chashivos that it should make any practical ramification? I'll think it would have different halachas. Hainu bar hainu dus, they're the same. Amalei Rava Tisvala Ravina, no. Toshma, the Tanya Echad Abar Bechados, Bekarka. So what's the chilik? El Shabar Bechafira Vahadus Bebinyan. There's a chilik how the bar is created in the dos. Bar is only Chafira. Meshenk and the dos, the Ein Chanami, they're very similar in what they accomplish. Rather, the dos also has, a binyan has rocks and has stones. So the Rishbam is Masber. Therefore, we can understand why the Mishnah needs to say bar nados, which was Ravina's question. Because if it would only say bar, I'll tell you, since it's chafira, it's not binyan. Therefore, it's not dafka bar. It's not sold because it doesn't have binyan like a house. Meshenkin dos, which is very similar to a house, will be sold. Therefore, I need to tell me dos. So why do you say dos? Just say dos and not bar. If you say dos, I'll tell you know why. Because since there's binyan, it makes it a chashiv azach. Meshenkein bar, which is no binyan, just digging, it's not chashiv. Therefore, you would think it would get sold in the house. Kamashmul in our Mishnah, bain bar, bain dos is not sold. Yosef, Rav Ashi, very similar. Instead of Ravini, Yosef, Ashi, Kakash, Lahainu, Barani, Dos, Amal, Markashisha. But Ray, Rav Chaz, Ashi, Toshma, Mamish, the exact same thing. The Tanya, Echad, Bar, Vechad, Dos, Bekarka, Elo, Shachar, Bar, Bechafira, Vados, Bebinyan. Again, the exact same concept that the Bar is Chafira, this Bebinyan. We need to tell us both because each has its own Chidushim. Now on the two dots, Samach Dalet, I'm at the bottom of the Amid. Bitzorach, Likach, Leiderech, Divrei Rekiva v'Chachamim Aimrim Eina Tzarich Likach Leiderech. We're now going to jump. This is the sugya of Meiche Bain Ra, Meiche Bain Yof. My love b'Hakim Iflagi one Samach Dalet on the base. Der Rebbe Kiva Savar Meicher Ba'ayin Yofe Meicher Rabbanan Savri Meiche Bain Ra Meicher. That what? That all mechiras in the Welt, Dr. Rishbam. The first Rishbam in the Daf tells us we're regarding all mechiras in the Welt. We want to try to find the concept of Meiche Bayin Yafe and Meiche Bayin Ra. And this is l'chayr the Makar Zok tomorrow. Whenever we say Shittis Rebbe Kiva, it's a Tamei. Meiche Bayin Yafe, Meiche Mahacha. We learn it over here. The Hainu, we learned the Lamed Zayin and Beis, where we talked about the Ilonis, where a person sells the Ilonis. Do we say, does he get to replace them if they die? We explain. It's tall and a machlaikis. If a person sells it ba'ayin yafi, he sells it generously, then he's also selling the karka, and therefore he can replace it. If you sell ba'ayin ra, he can't replace it. Zechara. This is the makar of meiche ba'ayin yafi and meiche ba'ayin ra. On that, the Gemara says no. Mimai dilma Rebbe Kiva savar ein adam reitzeh sheyitim ma'isa v'yidershu acher. The hainu has nothing to really do with meiche ba'ayin yafi and meiche ba'ayin ra. Why? Because over here we're talking about a very specific scenario. That I have a taina. The Meicher himself has a taina, and the Lekech's going to have a taina. We're going to see that Shittis Rebbe Kiva is saying it doesn't make sense over here. It's the Lekech's taina. The reason why I don't need to get a derech is because it doesn't add up that if I buy a bar nados, that it doesn't make sense that I'm not going to have a place to go. Rabbanan Savri, ein adam reitzeh sheyita ma'is v'yifrach ba'avr. Which is the other way around. Basically, we have Shittis Rebbe Kiva and Shittis Rabbanan. Shittis Rebbe Kiva is, like we saw in the Mishnah, that einoi tzarich likach leiderech. A person the lekech does not need to buy. According to the Kiva, you have to buy back. So what is the machlekes that we're trying to say is nothing to do with meiche bayin yafa, meiche bayin ra? I can tell you, Zok the Gemara, that dafka in our Mishnah, where the meiche and the lekech both have tainas. What's the tainas of the Gemara according to the Kiva? Why the person should have to buy a derech back is because the person sells a bar, and he's selling his money. He's selling the bar for money, but he's not willing to sell a bar if you're going to always trample in my backyard. Ein adam writes sheyitim ice. Ein adam, the lashon is ein adam writes sheyitim ice of yidus racher. People are going to keep coming to my backyard. It's not kedai for me. Rather, let's just explain a little more context to really understand what the other side is. My understanding, which is Rashitas Rabban is going to be yifrach ba'aver. When we learned the daf, we try to explain that when a person sells a bar vidus, you really have two options. If there's no derech, let's say I have a bar, and I sold you I have a house and I have a bar, and I sold you just the bar. If I'm not selling you the derech, you really become at my mercy. I could decide, you know what, I'm saying 7 to 9 in the morning you could come in, I'm not around, and come in at night. I could dictate when you can walk in and trample in my backyard. Again, so therefore we can understand, is that an extreme? Or no? Does a person willing to say, I'm not willing to just give you entry into my house, or a person when he sells a bar, which is shitas rabbanon, ein adam writes a shita mais v'yefrach ba'aver. I think yefrach ba'aver means more at the mercy of the Baal Bayis. I don't think it means yefrach ba'aver that he has to just take a helicopter to get in. It doesn't really mean that, because otherwise there's no bar. A person would never sell a bar. If the shitas rabbanon, you have to understand that avad the bars were getting sold without a derech. So Elamai, you have to explain there was an option, which is basically being at the mercy of the meicher. He told you when you could come in and out. That's where Rabbanan said, Ein adam right says, She'ita mai zivach ba'aver. I'm not 100% sure, I'm saying this on my own, but I think this is really how to understand Shitas, Rebbe Kiva, and Shitas, Rabbanan. So again, Dafka over here, the Meich and the Lekeach both have tainas. So Rebbe Kiva focuses on the taina of the Lekeach, and on the Meicher. Rabbanan focus on the taina of the Lekeach. The elos of Mimela, there's no raya. There's no right to what? There's no right to stam mechir shabaylam of meicher bayin yafe and meicher bayin ra. The elam is seifa. The problem is the seifa of that Mishnah. What's the seifa? In a case of machran la'acher, in a case where you only sold the bar, Reb Kiva Aimer, einay tzarech likach leiderech, v'chachamim Aimer tzarech. So that's what we're trying to say that regarding the scenario where the seif is. In the case of machran, just the bar and the dos, but the bais you kept for yourself. In such a case, we clearly saw that Reb Kiva holds ein tzarech likach leiderech. Why? Because we understood meicher bayin yafa meicher. The reason why when I buy only the bar I get to keep it is because in that case of meicher bayin yafa v'chachamim Aimer tzarech. So again, and the Rishbam is masbo over there. You can't say the shita is what we just said of ein adam writes a shita ma'isa v'yifrach ba'aver, or ein adam writes a shidushu shita ma'isa v'yidushu b'acher. Then we both have a shayla. We both have equal tainas. The Meichel and the Keach both have a taina. The question is, who overrides who? That we could understand in the Reishim. Hashem came in the Sefer. If that's really true, you're not focused on Meichel bayin yafa and Meichel bayin ra, Zakter Shbam, then the shitas should be the opposite, where you only sell the bar and not the house. And that the Gemara says, Dilma b'hai pligi. Rather, I'll tell you no. There are kiva savar basa daita de lekeach as linon. Rabbanan savri basa daita the meichas lin. According to Rekiva, you're going to go basa the das lekech. Therefore, einay tzarich likach leiderech, because all he did was buy the bar and the meicha gives it to him. You go basa the das lekech. The aina lekech and the meicha both have tainas. Rabbanan hold you go basa the das of the meicha. Therefore, again, we don't see the concept from the Mishnah on Samach Dalet, a raya to stam mechir shabaylam. Do we say meicher bayin yafa meicher or meicher bayin ra meicher? The Elamahat, we're going to try to bring a different makar, which is basically the whole entire daf is really two. It's either a Mishnah and Samach Dalet, or really I think it's on Ayin Aleph. To race and a seif on Samach Dalet doesn't work, and a race and seif on Ayin Aleph. And the Maskanas Gemara is we're going to bring a raya from the seifa of Ayin Aleph. So let's see the sugya of Ayin Aleph. Ve'ela meha. A person sells a sodet, loyas a bar. He doesn't sell the pit, v'loyas a gas, nor the wine press, v'loyas a chayvach. Bein charevin, bein yeshuvin, whether it's used or not, it doesn't make a difference. It's not sold. Zoktimar, that over there, v'tzarech likach leiderech divrei Rebbe Kiva. So we have a very similar scenario. Over here we're talking about a house. Over there we're talking about a sodet. Tzarech likach leiderech divrei Rebbe Kiva. V'chachamim oimrim ein etzarch. So again, we have very similar shittas of Akiva and Chachamim regarding if you need to buy a derech or not. So frek the Gemara, Hasulamali. Why do I need to be repetitive and say it again? Elalav kamash malon de Akiva savar meicher ba'ayin yofa meicher Rabbanan savri meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. That's exactly the point. The reason why you had to mention it twice, l'chayr it's extra, to tell me else in Samech Daled I wouldn't know the scenario of meicher ba'ayin yofa and stamichiras and meicher ba'ayin ra lefi shitas chachamim. That we have a yisur, another scenario, another case of ayin aleph to tell us dafka stamachir shabaylam. We go meicher ba'ayin ra and meicher ba'ayin yofa. On that, the Gemara slugs it up and says the dilmash minam bayis v'kamash malon sada. Memela, I can tell you, I have a case for you. You know why you need ayin aleph to tell us also the case of sada? Why? Utzricha. Diash minam bayis. If you would only have samach dalad, I'll tell you mishum debayis inusa l'chayra. The case of bayis, you also have tznius over there. Where it's a davar, it's more of a chashav. Where bayis, you can understand why you should have shitas chachamim rabbanan. Avasada mashen kein sada emaloi mashen kein ayin aleph, which is a sada. You don't have the taina of tznius. V'yesh mina sada, I have another taina. Mishum the koi lei davasha. Since by sada it's hard, it ruins, it's mazik the sada of a bayis emaloi. Again, therefore, it's not a raya to tell us that there's a yisur in ayin aleph, because you needed ayin aleph, which is a sada, and you needed our mishnah, which is a bias, and they both have their things why you should think otherwise, either tznius or hezek. And that which is the final nikuda, which we're going to bring a raya to Rabbanan Chachamim, is from the seifa of the scenario in ayin aleph. Elo meseifa of machern la'acher and ayin aleph. The Rekiva Omer einay tzarich likach derech v'chachamim oimrim tzarich. So again, why do they need that seifa? Hasu lamali hainu hach. Very nice the ratios you need, because we saw that Sad and Abayis are different. Elamai alavcha kamash malon, which is taka the kamash malon. The Rekiva sava meicher ba'ayin yafa meicher v'Rabbanan savri meicher ba'ayin roi meicher shma mino, which is taka the shma mino. The Rashbam brings out one point, which is Dr. Rashbam. Why can't maybe you could say you need the seifa of ayin aleph also, just like we saw that by the bias on Samech Daled you have tznius and hezek. Who then maybe Rabbi Akiva Rabbanan are arguing really on two things: the arguing ayin ra, the arguing yafa, and they're arguing whether sada is mazik or not. On that Dr. Rashbam, the Dr. Rashbam, Shamina Rabbi Akiva the kashi davashal sada, bahach svara nami maidi rabban. It's the last line of the Rashbam. The Rashbam saying that the Rabbanon is also agreeing to the svara of Akiva. The haloi pligi b'chol hanach babi of the Akiva deiu azil baset daita lekeach v'inu azli baset dasa meicher v'sulay midi. Dr. Rashbam, it's not reasonable to say that the machlekes or Akiva Rabbanon is in so many different points. Therefore, once Chachamim is maided to Akiva, you can understand that the seifa of ayin aleph is takim yusur, and it's coming to tell us Ein Chanami, the sugya of Rabbanan and Chachamim, a Rabbanan and Rekiva, meicher ba'ayin yafa meicher, a meicher ba'ayin ra yafa. Itmar, one samach daled on beis, the last dot. Rav Huna Merav, halacha is ke divrei Chachamim. That what the person sells it, meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. V'Rav Yirmiyah bar Amma Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, halacha ke Rekiva. So you have a machlekes, Rav and Shmuel. What is the halacha? The halacha is like a Rekiva, or the halacha is like Rabbanan. Amalei Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Rav Huna. V'zimnin sagin amrisa kamei the Rav. There was many times that we spoke in front of Rav. We said hilchas Rekiva, that the halacha is meicher b'ayin yafa. V'loy amar li v'loy midi, and he did not open his mouth. And if it's taka true that he held that a person when he hold like shitas chachamim l'chayra, he should have said something. Amalei heichi tanisa. How did you teach him these shitas of meicher b'ayin yafa and meicher b'ayin ra of Rabbi Akiva and Chacham? Amalei ifchatanina. I taught it the other way around. That Akiva is going to hold ayin ra, and Rabbanan is going to hold the ayin yafa. Since he said it the other way around, therefore he was quiet, because he knew that avada the shitas are really true. That the halacha is meicher ba'ayin ra meicher. And he says, Mishum hachi lo yamalach v'lamidi. That's why he's quiet, because you taught it differently. But avada la halacha, he knew the ba'ayin Ra Meicher, which is the Allah. No, he's passing like Rabbanan, Meicher Bain Ra. That's exactly the Pshat. Dr. Oshbam, Mishum Haki Loy Machaloi Midi Daha At Nami have a Pesak the Hilchasa, the Bain Ra Meicher. So he just learned other shittas around. He got confused. The Oshbam says, Avadi, he didn't say the opposite shittas, because otherwise he would have understood that he said it wrong. However, he was basically coming out that the opposite. The Rekiva is the one who holds Ayin Ra, which is not true. The halacha is like Chacham, which is Ayin Ra. That's Taka the halacha, not like Rabbi Kiva. Clearly says that. Halacha is Kedivra Chachamim, which is Shitas Rav. Shmuel, we're going to see, Tamayu. Rav and Shmuel, Tamayu. But Rav, what does Rav hold? Rav holds like Chachamim, Meicher, Ba'ayin, Ra, Meicher. Amalei Ravina Ravashi, Lema, Ozdu, Litamayu. Maybe they're going Rav and Shmuel and Shitasam. Why? Dam Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Ha'achin Shachok. We learned this in Zayinim and Beis regarding Yerusha. We're comparing Yerusha like a Mechira. Two brothers, when they're splitting up Yerusha, it's like a Mechira when a person buys. Ein lehen, loy derech zel zeh, they don't have a derech, v'loy sulam zel zeh, v'loy chaloyne zel zeh, v'loy emes hamayim zel zeh, v'zar b'hem shulchas kvuzen. We went through this on Zayinim and Beis, exactly all the nekudas of the sulam, the emes hamayim, even though the father had it, he doesn't get it. Why? Because that's Taka Allah. Rav. However, Rav holds Amar Yesh Lahan. So therefore, we're clearly saying this is the Machlekes. Rav and Shmuel, just like by Yerusha Achin Shachok, we're comparing it to Mechira, that it's L'Shitasam. Rav holds Yesh Lahan, Meicher Ba'ayin, Ra'ah Meicher, but Shmuel is going to hold Meicher Ba'ayin, Shmuel is going to hold Meicher Ba'ayin Yaf. And the Gemara said, Sricha, you need both. Why? Diash, meaning by he, if you tell me Dafka by the case of Yerusha, with the brothers, by he come Rav, Rav is saying the reason why he doesn't, the reason why. Yesh lahen derech al taimishum da amalei bin alamei bei kechi de darbe avasi. I want to live like the fathers, our forefathers. And Teda, we should see that Taki has a point. The Chsiv clearly says regarding Tehel and Tachas of Esecha, you, Banecha, where your sons should really be like you, Tamidei Chachamim, but over here we're taking it a little further. Avabaha, in the scenario over here, Ema, Maidile, Shmuel, maybe Rav would agree to Shmuel. Vietma Baha, Bahach Kama Shmuel, there Taka, over there in that scenario, Shmuel is being Makbet Avabaha, Ema, Maidile, Rav, maybe over here he would be Maidile, Rav, Memela, Tzricha, you needed the case of the Yerusha and the case over here. Amalei Rav Nachman, Le Rav Huna. Hilchas HaKavasim, is the halacha like Shmuel and Rebbe Kiva, Meicher Bain, Yafa Meicher, Hilchas HaKavasayu, or the halacha is like Rav and Rabbanan. Amalei, Hilchas HaKavasayu. The halacha is like you, which is Shmuel and Rebbe Kiva. Why? The Mekarusa Lebava, the Reish Galusa, he was the son-in-law of Zakdash Bam. Rav Nachman Chasana de Bein Asiyah Hava, he was the son-in-law of the Reish Galusa. And he always went in, the Shchicha Dayani, so you knew the halacha is much better, and therefore the halacha is going to be Ein Achanami, like Shmuel, and Rekiva, Meicher, Ba'ayin, Yafe, Meicher. Itmar, Shnei Batim Zel Lifnim Mizeh, when you have a house which is more interior into the house, Shneim B'mecher, Shneim Matana, when a person sells to two different people, Reuven and Shimon, Reuven, he sells him house A, which is exterior, and house B. In order to get into house B, you must use the derech to get in, of derech of apartment A to get into apartment B. So the Dr. Mar, Ein Lahan Derech Zel Zeh. Why? Dr. Ishban, because just like Yehechi, Dilepnimi, Zovin, V'Yahe, Bain, Yafe, who are the Lechitzim? They're both equal. Apartment A and apartment B both have equal ground, just like the interior guy gets 100%. Who are then the Chitzim? Kol Shekain, Dr. Mar, Vik Kol Shekain, Dr. Bach, the Chitzim b'matana o pnimi b'mecher. Why? Matana is more, when a person gives a mecher, it's more of a business, so we can understand. Mashenkin by matana, once a person gives a matana, he's very generous, and we can understand he would even go weiter. Therefore, we have a shayla. Chitzayin b'mecher, or pnim b'matana. The second outside house, I sold it as a mechira. Mashenkin, the interior house, I sold it as a matana. So since I sold you the interior house, you can't say like what we said earlier, that they're both equal ground. Because the chitzayin has a lashon of a mecher, which he did a mecher, Mashenkin the pnim, which is a matana, you can understand that he's giving him, he's being more generous with them. So Savamine, they thought, they both have equal ground. However, Zaktimara V'Loi, it's talking not true, because Milay Tanan, we learned this in the Mishnah 9 Alf. It says, V'mad Dvarma Murim B'Meicher. Dafka B'Meicher, we could say this concept of a nice matana, nice and cool. When a person gives a matana, he gives it b'ravchus. We see man diyav matana ba'in yafa yav, v'chanami man diyav matana ba'in yafa yav. Therefore, the pnimi, since he's getting it by matana, he will get a derech and not have taka. He's going to be more than the chitza. Zok the Mishnah Samechayim and Aleph. Hamayches abayis. A person sells a house. Machar sedelis. He sells the door with it. Ma'avaloi es ha maftech. But he doesn't sell the key. Machar es machteshes, which is like a mortar, a kavua, which is in the karka. Avaloi es matateles, not the ones that are portable. Machar es it's trivil, which is like a mill ring. Avaloi es akeles, and not the hopper on top of the mill. Avaloi es a tanur, not the oven. Avaloi es ikarim, nor the stove. However, bezman sha'amar loihu v'chol mashe b'soichai, then harei kulan mechurin. Everything is taka sold, all the tashmishin. However, they bring out one point. The Rishbam is maisiv, it's extensive Rishbam, but to pull out the point is as follows. Zok the Rishbam. Regarding portables, we can understand. The person will leave certain stuff. What about, for example, a microwave? Zok the Rishbam. A microwave, when you move, you'll leave the person, you'll take along. Zok the Rishbam, since I don't sell it, that's considered metal to him. You leave it there. Therefore, when he says, Hu chal mashe b'saycha, he's selling him the microwave, etc. However, that's dafka in a scenario where he's selling the house. Zok the Rishbam, and a chotzer in a scenario where you sell the chotzer. It's like moving, I gave you an example in Daf Yomi, it's like moving from Eretz Yisrael back to America, the young couples. They leave everything there. They say keep everything. Zok the Rishbam tu malachim. Either tercha loitzike, let it come back, is a big tercha. Or regarding stam, since it's so big, dafka chotzer, he says, gover gadol betili. So either stam it's a tercha, that's why he's selling, or it's a davar gadol. Look, the Gemara, Leima Masnisin, we're on Samachay, Amid Beis, top of the daf. Leima Masnisin, Loi Kermeir. Why Dikar Meir? Ha'amai clearly says, Machar Sakerem, when a person sells a kerem vineyard, Machar Tashmishi Kerem. He also sells the accessories, which is, for example, like a stakes that you use in a vineyard. You have these little metal stakes. So the Gemara, no, it's not a rafil. Tamer Meir is talking about dafka, tashmish kavua. Ha-sam kavia, hacha loy kavia. We're talking about a vir davar, which is not kavua. So you can't compare the Mishnah to Meir. For the Gemara, va mafteach, dumya de delis. Tani ma delis de kavia, lacharaf mafteach de kavia. Ella, since we see clearly who than a mafteach, Ella mechavertem esnisin, de loy Meir. In Taka, we find that our Mishnah is not like Shitas Reb Meir. Tana Abana. HaMoicher Sabayis, Mocher Sadelis, he sells the door, Visanaga, the bolt, Visamano, the lock, Avaloyas, Ameftech, Benatiki. Mocher Esamachtashes, Ha Chakuka. We're talking about you have a carved out mortar, you put it in the way you created this mortar was carved out. Avaloyas a Kvua. Kvua is when you attach it later. Mocher, it's Stroivil. Avaloyas a Kelis, again, you sell the mill ring, but not the hop at the bottom, you do. Loyas a Tanur, Veloyas a Karaim, nor the stove, or the oven, Veloyas a Rechaim, nor the mill. Rabbi Lezer, oimi uchashitas Rabbi Lezer. Kol hamechober lekarka harei hu kekarka. Whatever is attached to the ground has a loch of karka. Bizman shalom aloi hu v'chol mashe b'soichai harei kulon mechur. Benkach hu benkach. However, loy macha loy sabor v'loy sedus v'loy setzia. All those three benkach hu benkach. You're not selling them. Why? Because they're not in the house. They'll be binyanim b'fnei atzmanim. Zokt. The Gemara. Taner Abanan. Tzinar shechakuku ulabasoif kovu. We're going to learn shitas about more hilchas mikvahs. We all know regarding mayim shuvim. Tzinar shechakuku ulabasoif kovu. You have a problem whenever there's a mikvah, whenever it goes into a kli, it turns into mayim shuvim. We're going to see that if as long as it's the first 40 saw, it's going to be pasol midaraisa. So what happens when you have a tzinar? You first carve it out so it has a loch of a kli. And then you put it into the ground. The halacha is paisel. Since it has a kli, it's going to be paisel in regarding mayim shuvin. Paisel is a mikvah. We're going to see the sprach. Paisel es a mikvah. It sounds like it was once kosher. Kavu, however, lebasoif chakaku, ain't a paisel es a mikvah. However, if what you do is you first put it into the ground, then you carve it out, since it never had a kli, has a loch of karka, it's not going to paisel the mikvah. Atkan, the sugya of mikvah. Zok Mara Mani, Loi Rabbi Elezer, Veloy Rabban. This sheet does what we're saying, but the mikvah is not Rabbi Elezer or Rabban. Frekti Mara. Hi Rabbi Elezer or Rabban Zok Rishbam. Just Orcha the Milsa. in a v'hai rabbanon hach in derech zok dershban gemara laharach kol kach v'Yehuda. Then you can say the rabbanon. So which not Rabbi Lezer rabbanon? So we're going to start. The next daf is going to go through a few prices. Ilema Rabbi Lezer the bias. Maybe you'll tell us our sugya, the case of the bias. And then the Gemara says, no, Dilma hainu taima Rabbi Lezer meicher bayin yafa meicher rabbanon savi meicher bayin ra meicher. Maybe our sugya regarding a mechira has to do regarding a meicher bayin yafa. Mashenkin and mikvah has separate halachas of hilchas kli. Has nothing to do with the concept of yafa or ra. The Elo, Rabbi Lezer, the Kaveres, the Vayrim. We're talking about Rabbi Lezer of a beehive. What's the sugya of a beehive? The Tanan. Regarding a beehive, we're going to say that you attach it to the ground. We're going to see a machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Chachamim. If it has a din of karka, we're going to see 4 different nafkaminas if it's karka or not. Kaveres, the Vayrim. The Rabbi Lezer, oime harehi karka. Regarding karka, there's a chiluk. How do you buy karka versus metaltalin? Karka is nikne bekesa shtar chazaka, and you have also another thing called kinyan agav. Meshenke metaltum, it's nikne b'meshicha, bagbo, v'chulei. So the halach is kaveres daimim is kakarka le'inyan kinyan. Another halach is v'koisav and alea prusbol. What is prusbol? Rishbam is quite marich. This is one of the Rishbams that are quite marich exactly what happened with prusbol, which Hillel was saking because people weren't lending alvos. And Hillel wanted to make a certain degree that he shouldn't go completely against the Torah. So since the Torah talks about, where it talks about alvaz, it says lo yigosh. So Zot Hillel, when a person has karka or he has a mashkin, there's no lo yigosh. He doesn't have to approach him because he has a collateral. He can take it on his own. So Hillel was misakin. When could he write a prosbol? Is when you have karka. Zokter, this is the Rishban's malach mitam lo yigosh. When a person has karka, there is no issue of lo yigosh. The Rishbam actually brings some ezeder Rashi. The Rashi is going to hold a different pshat, more of a concept of milsa the shchicha. The reason why Hillel was mesakin prosbol only with karka because a person would only get milsa shchicha the tekinu rabbanon. Meshenka when there's no karka, it's a milsa the shchicha. Whether it's mitam la yigosh or mitam milsa the shchicha, the point is that a kaveris devayirim, according to Shittas Rabbi Lezer, has a din of karka that what? That you can write a prosbol. The einoi mekabeles tuma. One samach vavim at aleph, top of the daf. Another halach is the einoi mekabeles tuma b'mekayma. Because again, regarding Tumah, Eichel, Mashke, and Adam Mikli, all the stuff keep in Makabal Tumah. Mashenkin Karka, the Psukim to tell us Karka, if it's Karka, is not Makabal Tumah. So therefore, Kaveris Devarim is going to have a din of Karka that's not going to be Makabal Tumah. Another halach is V'aroida Mimena B'Shabbos, someone who takes out the honey on Shabbos, Chayev Chatos. He's Chayev Chatos for removing the honey. Why? Because he's over Tlisha. Since it has a halach of Karka, he's Chayev mitam ksira tlisha. The Chachamim are the opposite. This kaveres devayirim, no karka doesn't have a locha karka, and it's not going to be of shachazaka. The ein kaisim le prosbol, you can't write a prosbol because Hillel was masakin daf when you have karka. Umekabel is tumah b'mekayma. Again, it's not karka as a kli, so it's makabel tumah. If I write them in Shabbos potter, because you only chayv on Shabbos something where it's karka, you would have tlisha. Again, we clearly see, we're trying to bring halacha, we clearly see, just like by Kaveres Devayirim, Shittas Rabbi Lezer is what? That since you were mechaber the karka, harei karka, so it's not like by mikvah. Just like by mikvah, we clearly see, for the case of chakaku ulabasoif kavu, paisel is a mikvah. Kavu ulabasoif chaku, ain't a paisel is a mikvah. The question is, l'chayra, why does it pass on the mikvah according to Shittas Rabbi Lezer, just like by Kaveres the Vayrim, since in Mechaber the Karka, Arei Kekarka, who are then by Mikvah, it should be Kekarka, and it should not pass on Mitam Mayim Shuvim. On that, the Gemara says, no. Time der Rabbi Lazar, or time, Zok Gemara, no. Hasam Kadama Rabbi Lazar ben Padas, which is a Mayra, the time of the Rabbi Lazar is my time of the Rabbi Eliezer. You know what Pshat and Kaveres Devayirim, the Rabbi Lazar holds as a din of Karka, has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish by saying when someone has a Kli, and he attaches it to the ground, it loses its status of Kli and turns into Karka, rather a different reason. Mitam Psukim, Dichsev, steht in Shmuel Aleph, regarding Yoinason. Ve'yitbel Oisa B'yaras Hadvash, he took his stick, the tip of stick, and he dipped it into the Lashon of the Pasuk is, Ya'aris Dvash, the what? Ma Ya'ara Toilish Mimanam Shabbos, we compared it to a forest of trees. Ma Ya'ara Toilish Mimanam Shabbos, Chayiv Chatos Advash, Roidim Mimanam Shabbos, Chayiv Chatos. So the only reason why Kaveres Devarim Mitam Psukim, we have Limudim, that it has like a halacha of a yar, but avada and regular practical halachas, Rabbi Lezer is going to be meider when a person has a kli and he puts it into a karka, does not lose the status of a kli, and therefore it's going to be considered mayim shuvim. So we knocked off the Relezer the Kaveris. Let's try another one. Ela Relezer the Daf. Regarding a daf, we're talking about a plank. We're discussing a plank of wood. We're going to see it's going to change to a meteches. But we're talking about a plank of wood. And the Rashbam is masber. Two mahalchim, how it could be. Either it's like what we do when we need challah. We make challah on Erev Shabbos. We use a big plank of wood on the counter. It's one mahalach. Or it's like more what they do when you see these people when they sell on the streets. They pull out like a window. And they make it into like a type of shelf. That type of daf. The Rashbam brings those two mahalchim. The daf now we're talking about daf shel nachtoimim shekava b'kaisel. You have this plank and you're mechaber to kaisel. Relezer mitayer v'chachomim mitamim. You clearly see the Relezer is mitar. Why? The kol ha'mechuber lekarka reika karka. The chachomim say it's not batil. So who it then over here? Clearly we want to say that this is not going to stand with the sugya of mikvah. Because l'chayra by the plank of wood we're not either mechalik. Also by the plank of wood you have two options. Either you could buy raw material, attach it, and then clean it, you plane it, you scrape it and everything, you make it smooth like a good shelf. Or you buy it ready-made, and then you just attach it. So we're understanding it makes no nafkamino, the sheetas are going to stick. The Relezer is mitar and has a din karka, even if you took the kli, and then you attach it. So within the chayr mikutz, the raya not like Reb Eliezer. And that the Gemara says, Mani, frek the Gemara kash as follows. Monashach. Rabbi Eliezer, that you're telling me that it's mechuber lekarka reika karka in such a case, then afilu chakaku l'basoif kavu, it should have aloch and karka, and the mikvah should be puzzle. The mikvah should be kosher. The mikvah should be kosher. And Rabbanon, if you tell me like Rabbanon, afilu kavu l'basoif chakaku, it should be like what? It should be like a kli, and therefore it should be puzzle. And that the Gemara says, no. And that the Gemara says, I'll tell you, Rabbi Eliezer. So what are we talking about? The Shani Pshute Kli Eitz, that Tumah is only the Rabbanon. Since we're only in the Velt of the Rabbanon, the Mela is like, when it's mechuber lekarka, since we're only in the Velt of the Rabbanon, it looks like a karka, we're able to say, Eliezer will say, Hayreika karka. When it's not mechuber lekarka, we'll use it as a kli. Mashenk and mikvahs, we're understanding right now, we're talking about mikvahs daraisa. So if mikvahs daraisa, then avada, you can't compare the two. On that, right away, the Gemara asks, Michlal, the Shiva daraisa, is this really true? That the whole Shiva is daraisa, that's the chilik. One, samach vavam base. V'kaim alon derabanan. The Kaimalan that's only the Rabbanon. The Rishban, it's really Samach Vavam and Aleph is Masber, that the whole concept of She'iva, Mem Sa, is really the whole scenario of Maim Shuv, and it's only once you have 40 Sa, you're allowed to add even with the Rabbanon. But eventually, when it gets to a point where you're flipping so much water that it's ready more than half, more than 20 Sa, mid the Rabbanon, it's possible. So the Gemara is understanding once, mid the Raisa, once you have a mikvah that's kosher, you can't pass it up with Maim Shuvin, even with Roy, mid the Raisa. So frek the Moritz, the Rashbam is masber, v'kaimelon derabanan. So maybe over here we're talking about derabanan. So the Rashbam, the lashon and samachem and beis is paisel es a mikvah. Lashon paisel means that it's a mikvah that kosher today, and you're parceling it. So if it's a mikvah that kosher, once it's kosher midaraisa, you can't mayim shuvin midaraisa doesn't parcel a mikvah. So again, with such a kasha, we're back to square one. You can't be mechalik that the Kli Eitz is talking about the Rabbanan. Over here, we're talking about the Raisa. Another kasha is Va'oi, the Amr of Yosef ben Rechanina, Bedaf Shamateches is the Machlaik, is not Daf Shaleitz. The last Rishbam and Samach Vavam at Aleph says, Mishum, the Pshite Kli Eitz, Leslu to Maklal. Hikma, you have to say Ukma of Daf Shamateches. It doesn't make sense to even be talking about a Daf Shel Kli Eitz. Therefore, we're back to square one that you can't be mechalik. They're saying one's the Rabbanan and Mikvah's the Raisa. One Samach Vavam at Beis, top of the Amid. Zok Gemara la'olam Rabbanani. It's Taco, we're going to Shitas Rabbanan, not working with Rabbi Eliezer. That what? Vishani, She'iva, the Rabbanan. And Chanami, we're talking about Paisal as a mikvah, it's only with Rabbanan. So since it's only with the Rabbanan, we could understand that it's Ein Chanami, you're parceling it, mitam, the Rabbanan. Frek the Mari Hachi, then I don't understand. Afilu Chakuku, Ulubesoif Kavu, Nami. Why is it that the halach is if it was chakaku? Rabbanon is made that it apostles the mikvah. The question is, why does it apostle the mikvah? It's only the Rabbanon. And that Gemara says, no. Shani hasam, the Ika Torah is kli ala betalish. Where Zukt and the Rishbam is masber. Since originally it was a kli, Kol kach, Zok Rashbam, loy ratzul haka. We don't want to go so extreme and say that such a sneer is mutter, because people, it's going to get to a point where people are going to think that Bechlal, Kalim are mutter, and that Avad is not. It's only where it's Mechuber L'Karka, we want to be Meko, Mashain Kain. When it's not Mechuber, when it wasn't Mechuber L'Karka, we're not going to want to be Mevato, Gzeirosom, Le'gamri. Boy Rav Yosef. Now we're going to learn another sugya of Hechsher L'Toma. To give a little more context, and Hechsher L'Toma is as follows. Steht in the Torah, V'chiyitein v'chiyutan mayim al zera v'nafal minivlasav olav tamei ulachem. So we clearly see in the pasuk that the way how to read it is more the sugyas of Bava Metzia. In the beginning of Bava Metzia, how to learn v'chiyitein v'chiyutan. We learn it instead of learning of yitain, he will place it. We learn as yutan as passive. However, in order we learned that drasha, we wanted to say doim ilaha. How do you have dum yutan dum yitain? Means you have to have das. You have to have das that you want the water to splash and clean it up. For example, you have an object outside. You want it to clean it up every time, even your car. You want it to be clean. Once the water touches it and your machshava is happy, the halacha is this mayim is huchshel tumah. Whether it's mayim or zayin mashkim, they're huchshel tumah, and that could make something tummy. However, without your machshava, without you wanting it, it can't. However, the psukim, we learn from psukim, dafka metaltul v'chulei. Aval karka machshava doesn't help. If it goes into touches karka, it's not huchshel tumah. So now we're going to have a question as follows. What is the halacha regarding scenarios where do we say it has a din of karka and therefore it's not huchshel tumah, or it have a din of a kli and it is huchshel tumah? So Zakti Mar Bar Rav Yosef. Meg shomim shechashav aleim yan machshava, so it's good. Ladiach es it's troivelin. Mao. So we're talking about the mill ring. What is the halacha of mill ring? Which really the question is going to become: is it like karka or is it like metaltalin? Do we say Mao is roim regarding huchshel tumah? So aliba there Rabbi Elazar the Amar kolam mechuber karka reika karka. It's not a question. Has a din of karka? It's not huchshel tumah. Lighty bailach. Not even a shayla. However, where the question becomes when we have a shayla is as follows: Kiti bailach aliva the rabbanon the amri eina kekarka mai. What is the shayla regarding rabbanon? So the Rashbam is marich and explains what the shayla is. He says as follows. To explain it, we know a mill ring, its troivelin is macher, and the machdeshes hakavur, which is our Mishnah, is not sold. So they both were understanding were a kli, and you were mechabel l'karka. So we're mechalek the its troivelin, which is sold, according to the sheets of Rabbanah, and machdesh is not. The question, Dr. Rashbam, he breaks it down, is the suffix becomes as follows. Do we say that it's troivelin and the machdeshes both have a din of kli, and the only reason why it's troivelin is machaz Dr. Rashbam because it's yosek kavua, but avada has a kli, or no, ba'atzim it's the other way around. It's troivelin and the machdeshes has a din of karka. And the reason why machtesh is not sold has to do with the sugyas of meicher ba'ayin ra, meicher which is shitas chachamim, meshenk in a mill, we can understand it is sold. So according to that shah, we can understand the mai, and this is what blibing teku. The question really becomes: is it troivelin and machtesh have a din of karka or has a din of kli? On that we talk a blib teku. Zok Gemara. Shalach le Rav Nechemia berei de Rav Yosef le Rabba berei de Rav Huna. He sent in the following directive, the following halacha berei de Rav Huna zuti lenardai. When you go to nardai, tell them as follows. This is more ksubas regarding a person that dies and he left over single girls. We're talking about with his boys, so there's Yerusha involved. They got the Yerusha. The halacha is we evaluate how much a father would give to a daughter for the dowry. However, in a scenario where we don't know, the halacha is we give it iser nichse. We give it 10%. However, this 10% has to come from karka. On that, Rav Nechemia, with that understanding, Nechemia sent an aday, he says, Ki ha'asiyah ach itasol kamach agve iser nichse. You should take the 10%. Afilu mitz troiveli de rechaim. Why? Because it has a din of karka. Rav Ashi Kavina Ber Kahani, he said, Magvinon afilu mamalo debita, which means the rent. And Taisus right away, Taisus Dibra Maskal mamalo debita explains, we're not talking about rent that's muchan mezuman, because then Avad has din metalton. Rather, we're talking about a lease. The father owns real estate and people have leases. So the chiddush is that the rent in the future is coming up. There's a half year left, whatever it is. That rent that's coming up has a din of karka and not metalton. And he says, therefore, the kamash one is considered karka. Zok the Mishnah Samech Zayin Omer Aleph. Hamoicher es a chotzer. Now we're up to chotzer. Machar, batim, bayrai, sichna mayers. You sell all the rooms and you sell the bayers, sichna mayers. Avaloi, es metaltal. When you sell a chutz, you sell much more, but not the metaltal. Bezman, shamaloi, hu v'choma shebesaychai, hare, kulan mechurin. Then everything is sold. Why? Ben kach u ben kach, however, loy machar, loy es ha-merchatz, veloy es beis habad, shebesaychi. You don't sell the schwitz and the wine press and the owl press, whatever it is. Rabbi Lezer, me'amoiches ha-chotzer, shitas Rabbi Lezer, loy machar, ela viro shachotzer. So again, shitas Tanakami, you're not going to bechlal sell the merchatz, but zok dershbam, the ain't a bechlal chotzer. Has nothing to do with the chotzer. However, according to Rabbi Lezer was mechadish that everything is not sold, and the point is just avira shel chotzer. Now the Rashbam is Maisa. We really saw the Rashbam earlier in the beginning of the parak. Really have to know the Rashbam Samach Alpha and Beis said the same thing. Why can't you tell based on the amount he paid? What's the question? That the Rashbam says. The other Rishonim go on length, but the Rashbam says ein aina'a lekarka'is. So therefore, there's no way to tell from the money. Zok tahela gikmar tana banan ameches achatzer machar batim hachitzainim or batim apnimi. You sell the inner houses and the outer houses. Doesn't make a difference. Ubeis al chusais. Beis al chusais. Rashi's masber. This is a glass. What they use the karka, which is sand. That's how they made glass out of it. That is also sold. Chaniyos psuches l'seicha. We're going to see storefronts that go into the chatzar. It's sold nimkar sima v'sheim psuches l'seicha ein nimkar sima. The question is going to become psuches l'kana has two entrance ways. One's into the chatzar, one's not. Eilu ve'elu nimkar sima. Rabbi Lezer hamoiches hachatzer again le'machar ela miluso shel chatzar. All he sells is miluso. Zok Rashbam is the airspace. Amamar psuches l'kana we said nimkar sima. Frak the Gemara of Tani Rav Chia ein nimkar sima. We clearly said it's not sold, and that Gemara says no, like kasha. Ha deroi tashmish tayu legav. Ha deroi tashmish tayu lebar. Depends. Where is your clients coming from? If most of the traffic is coming from the chatzar ein echanami avada, we're going to say that it's nick noise, it's nimkar sima. But if right of the traffic comes from the outside veld, then it's not sold. Rabbi Lezer Omer. Ha-moicher sa-chatzar le-mocher la-vir sha-chatzar. Amar Rabba, Amar Rava as follows. Now, to give a little akdama, there's three lashonis a person could use. Dirsa, darta, and chatzar. Dirsa usually means a lashon dir, lashon residence. It's also usually going to mean including the houses in a chatzar. Darsa, it could usually, it's more to the open space, saying more of a darsa open space, not really so much houses. Chatzar, it sounds like dafka open spaces. You have three levels of lashonis. Zok Gemara, Amar Rabba, Amar Rava, depending on the tiyaya and the guys. Id amalei dirsa. If you use a lashon dirsa, which lashon dir, lashon bayis. The kul ama loy pligi the bati mashim. Bein Rabbi Lezer, bein Tanakama, they both agree that you're selling a house. Ki pligi da amalei darsa. Now when you have a middle lashon darsa, mar savar, according to Rabbi Lezer, he's going to hold tarbitza mashma. It sounds like a garden. Umar savar, Tanakama argues, says biti mashma. Atkan, the first lashon. Ikadamri amarabo also amaravi id amalei darsa. If you use the middle lashon, the kul amalei pligi, the bati mashma. The even Rabbi Lezer's maidim means a house. Ki pligi da amalei chatzar. What's the machlokes? Mar sav, which is Rabbi Lezer, chatzar is avir mashma. Mar savar ke chatzar mishkan. Just like by the chatzar mishkan, we use the lashon in the pasuk of Eirich HaChatzar Mea Ba'ama V'Roichim V'Chamisha Ma'ama, and we included the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Oyel, which is like similar like houses. Therefore, houses are also going to be sold. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Nachman Machaloi. If a person sells a chulsis, which is a sand field for glass, or mitzula, which is a riverbed, or Bam Tum Hachim, what a mitzula can mean. Either can mean that you use it for kesev and zav, or Rabbeinu Chanana once said that's Rabbeinu Chanana, or say it's a fish pond. Whether it's a fish pond, you use it for gold and silver, doesn't make a difference. Hechsek becholsis, if you have a chazak on this cholsis, like on a metzula, hechsek metzula, like on a cholsis. By making a kinyan in one, you're not cutting in the other one. We all know Shita Shmuel, machaloi, eser sadois, be'eser medinois, kiva chechsek ba'achas man kana kula. And once you're machzik in one, you're kind of everything. So why am I not kind of when I'm machzik in a cholsis and metzula? On that, the Gemara answers no. The way we look at karka, it's one extensive blanket, it's one karka, so maybe we can understand that they all are kind of. However, hacha over here, However, kula chada tashmashtu. But hach over here, ha tashmish l'chod, v'ha tashmish l'chod. Over here, since they're separate, and really we learn it from Psukim of shavu ba'rechem asher tefastim. The Rashbam brings that we're able to learn that a person makes a tfisa. We can understand it everywhere as long as it's similar. Tashmish, we can understand it's nikne. But Shmuel is going to say that once it has separate tashmishim, it's not sold. V'ikadamri one samach zayin of beis Amar Rabbar. Again, the Tzionim say Rav Amar of Nachman. Hechsek milchos is kana mitzula. Frek demar pshita. Now just going the other way around. The Hamashmo machalas sadas. It's sold. What's the chiddush? And then again, ma the tema hatzamud the sin the darachad v'lhach hatash mishachod v'hatash mishachod. Kamashmo we don't say it. So the ikad Amri learns it's a kamashmo that we don't say sin the darachad. Now we're going to start a Mishnah samach zayin and beis where it talks about an olive press. When we learned the daf, we really gave out the Perish Chai to everyone to really understand how we can understand the following Mishnah, because the olive press has so many different components and accessories. So on a basic level, there's a 3-step process how to make olives. First, what you do is, we're going to learn a mamel. The Rashbam is going to give 2 mahalchim. What a mamel either means a crusher or it means the bowl that you crush it. So the first process to make olive oil is that you take a bucket with a crusher, you put the olives in, you crush it. That's step A. Then the following process is, you put it into rechaim atichtoni, you put it into a mill, which is much stronger, crushes it even on a higher madrega, which grinds it better. Then you're going to put it into a sack, you take it and you bring it to the olive press. The olive press, now olive press is made out of many, many components. The basic components we're going to learn in the Mishnah is, there's a bucket. We call it the yam. That's where the olives are going to be. On top of that is going to be nasarim, which is what? It is the pressure which creates the oil. On top of the nasarim is something called avirim, which are boards. The reason why you have avirim is to level out the pressure. So you have this bucket. On top of it is these, we'll call them the nails. And then you have planks of wood to level out the pressure, which how you're going to see in a second how we're going to create that pressure. So you have something called avirim. On top of the avirim, what creates the pressure? A thick beam. It's called the kaira. So the kaira goes down. Now there's level other boards which level the olives and the nasarim to go into the olives. It creates into the bucket. The bucket has holes where the oil comes out. Like that, you have beautiful olive oil. Now, how does the beam work itself? The beam also has, the Mishnah explains very specifically. The beam was held up with called bisulais, lashon twins, lashon things. The Gemara is going to say it's made out of cedar wood. You have 2 beams. You have a berichim, which is a hinge that goes in between the kaira. So now you have a very thick kaira. Now, how did the kaira go down? The way the kaira went down wasn't like a leveler that you just press down. Rather, it was like a screw. Just like when you spin a screw, it pushes it like a screw could go in. Then the kaira goes down. How did you push the screw? With a wheel, with a galgol. You spun it just like the way a drill, just like how you use a screwdriver. That is more or less how olive oil was created. With that understanding, let's jump right into the Mishnah. HaMoicher Beis Abad, someone who sells an olive press, Mocher Sayam, he sells the main bucket where we said the oil is going to be, on the 3rd shlab. That's a mamel. Mamel is the crusher. The Rashbam brings 2 ma'achim. Either means the piece that you crush it, or it's the bucket where it gets crushed in. That's a psulais. We said it was those twins, 2 beams that hold up with the briach that hold up the main beam. The avirim, which we explained, are those little boards on top of the nails, which level out the pressure. That's al galgo, we said, is the wheel that spins in order for the current to go down. That's a kaira, which is a big chiddush. We're going to see that Shitas, Rabbi Elazar is going to say kaira is the main part. Then all the entire olive press is sold. Rabbi Elazar, no, Meiche Beis Abad, come on, Meiche is a kaira. The Gemara is going to say, because kaira is, that's what the olive press is. That is the meat. Zok the Gemara, yam, what is the yam? The spool, talavcha. It's a vat, that's where the olives are. Mamel is crusher. Amar Abba bar Mamel. Interesting, I guess his father was a crusher. I was wondering. Mafrechta could either mean this bucket or taka means what we crush. Pisulais. What is these pisulais? Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Klunusais shel erez. These poles from cedar wood. Shemamidem em sakar that holds onto the beam. Avirim, these are boards. Kapsi, they're planks. Galgo, the wheel, is chumrsa, which is like a screw. Kaira, zok the Rashbam, kaira. The Mishnah is a kaira kamashma. Even in Bava they called it a kaira. Taner Abanan. HaMoicher Beis Abad, Machers and the Sarim Yisal, the blocks, Vesiykovim, the vats, Vesamafreichais, and the mortars, Vesarichaim, Tichtainis, and the lower mills of Allah Sel Yaino. Bismancha Amalai, who, Vechal, Shemashi Besaichai, Rei, Kula, Mechuru, and everything is sold. Benkach, however, Loy Macha, Loy Savirim, not the boards, Loy Sasakin, which we explained, is those sacks which you take from level 2 to level 3, which is the main olive press. V'loi esem artufim, which are leather sacks. The Bach takes it out, I think. Meiches a kayer. Shita Sebelez is you got to always sell the kayer. Why? Shalai nikra beisabad el al shum kayer. The whole concept of the olive press, the way it works, the primary function, the core function of the olive press is that main beam. Otherwise, you cannot create olive oil. And Yatz Hashem next week we're going to pick up in the Mishnah Samach Zayin Amud Beis.